Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our Testimony Tuesday program. Tonight, I am so excited to introduce you to Jennifer. Jennifer, welcome to our program, and I am so excited for you to tell your story to our audience tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so we're just gonna dive right in because unlike, and I just shared this with you before I hit record, but unlike most of the people I interview, I don't know you very well. I have just a friend of mine recommended I follow you on social media. She knows what I love, and she knows the heart that I have for ministry and pro life. Endeavors. And so she connected me with you through social media. And I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, me and this lady need to be friends. She my heart. So take me back to January of 2014, your family, your life, your relationships, etc.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. When it all started. So, January 2014, my husband and I had been married 19 years. I'm a sign language interpreter. We have 4 children, and we're living in North Carolina, and all is pretty much status quo. Nothing is really out of the ordinary. And I take a job out of town, a 2-week long assignment. I'm freelance work is a lot of travel, and I'm traveling, and I am staying in a hotel. And on the last day of what is a 2-week long assignment, a boring assignment, I'm doing a job training, an overnight kind of thing. I finish work mid-morning, and I'm going back to the hotel, and it's snowy and wintry and cold and all of that. And I go back to my room, and I'm not paying attention to anything around me. And I didn't realize that I had been followed from the parking lot. And I get the door open to my room, and I turn around to close it. And people talk a lot now about cameras in hotels and about security and all of this. And what I think is important to understand, as I set up what is now my story, is that this was a real out of the way. It wasn't. I wouldn't even call it a hotel. It was a motel. They still used a cash register. There were no cameras. There was no kind of security. This was not this was not a chain. This was not a name. This was like a Bob's Hotel kind of thing, and not everywhere in the country is as up to date, is as you know current as a lot of people think. And this was not one of those places. This was a room that opened to the parking lot. I think it might have had it didn't have any fancy locks. It didn't have any kind of security as people think. um, I turned around to close the door, and there was a man standing in my doorway. And we talk a lot about fight or flight, in moments of panic, and we don't talk a lot about freeze. And I think more often than not, when faced with a situation that is surreal, we tend to freeze, and I froze. And I froze because this is not something, these horrible things that you feel are about to happen are not things that happen to you. They're not things that happen in real life. This is stuff of movies and Lifetime and the news. And I had about a moment to think of what to do, what was going to happen. And then he punched me in the head. And my fight eventually kicked in, and I fought this. I say man, but he really looked like little more than a kid. I would find out later that he was 22 at the time he attacked me. And I fought until I heard, before I felt, which was a strange phenomenon. My fingers break and my ribs break. And then I crawled somewhere inside myself and tried to disconnect from my body. And I remember saying over and over, kind of whatever's happening to my body, he can't touch my soul. And at some point I lost consciousness, and I remember waking up to the sound of a woman screaming, and I was very cold, and I had been kind of tossed, I guess, behind the hotel in an outside stairwell in the snow. And there was a woman leaning over me and covering me with her coat, and she's crying. And I remember trying to sit up and realizing that I was very hurt. And then I remembered fighting. And that was all I would remember for a little while. Not quite what happened, but fighting. And in the hospital, I was treated for the broken bones and some internal damage that would require 10 surgeries to repair, and a brain bleed that resolved without surgery but left me with a seizure disorder. And I found out 6 weeks later that I was pregnant from the attack. And that was January and February of 2014.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know how hard it is to share about traumas in our lives. And so I just really appreciate you being so real and vulnerable to share that, because I know that we have women and men that are watching this and that will watch this that can relate to your story. And I will say, and I've shared this, obviously also, so many of the women that I work with in that situation have chosen abortion.
Mhm.
One of the things that I hear more often than not is that people can be pro-life, but in the idea of rape, then they think that the child should be aborted. So take us to you and your husband in that moment, and I can't even comprehend the pain that you had to go through to heal from the rape, but then to and obviously your marriage survived the rape, which is also, a gift from the Lord, I know. So how did you go from this horrible tragedy, this intense trauma, to now you're pregnant? And did you ever consider abortion? And kind of walk us through that journey with you and your husband, if you don't mind.
Sure, sure. So it's interesting. We were doing so poorly after the attack. We were not handling it well, and that's such a ridiculous understatement. Um, and maybe that seems like an obvious thing to say, but Jeff and I Jeff and I were so solid, and we had been through a lot in almost 20 years, and I think we had just assumed that there wasn't anything that we couldn't sail through. And it sort of stunned us that we were doing so badly with this, that we didn't know what to do or how to navigate this pain. We were so focused on, I don't, we talked a lot about praying for each other, but we didn't pray together, which was strange. I just think we didn't have the words. And Jeff was trying so hard to be what he thought I needed, and not show his pain, and just smile and be like, we're going to get through this, and God is going to get us through this. But I could hear him in the shower when he thought I was asleep, just sobbing these wrenching, ugly sobs, and punching the shower. And he'd come out and stroke my hair with these bloodied knuckles, and I'd pretend I didn't hear him, and he'd pretend I didn't know. And it was just this phoniness that we'd never have with each other, and we were falling to pieces. And it was so bad. And we had told our children that I was in a car accident to explain why I was so banged up. And my daughter was the oldest at the time. She was 16, almost 17, and she didn't buy it. My boys, being boys, they were like, okay, that sucks, and they moved on. Like, they didn't know. But my daughter was like, something else is going on. Mom is not okay. But she didn't ask. I think she was afraid to find out. Um, but we didn't know, there's no manual, for what you do. And he was afraid to touch me, and I wanted and didn't want to be touched ever again. And it was just bad. It was bad. And so I was almost 39, and my mom went through early menopause. And so I think when I skipped a period, I didn't give it too much thought, but I thought, well, I mean, Jeff had a vasectomy years before, and I remember thinking, well, maybe I'm going into early menopause. And that was about as much thought as I gave it. And so when we found out I was pregnant, um, it sort of brought us back to familiar ground. And it was Jeff who kind of articulated that, and that made sense why we were so able to quite quickly accept this and be like, okay, this we know, pregnancy we know, babies we know, babies we love, we can do this. The rape and the trauma and the violence and all of that ugliness, we didn't know what to do with that. But babies, okay, babies, this we've got, we can do this. And it was immediately, for me anyway, when I first saw that test, I kind of folded in on myself, and there was a moment of just, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what to do. And I think it was just, what do I say to people? It wasn't like I can't do this. It was just, what do I say? I have to face my children. How do I bring this up to Jeff, my in-laws, my parents? We hadn't told anybody. I had been hiding in the house. And I remember telling Jeff, don't tell anybody. There's just such a shame that surrounds rape, which should not be the case, but it is. You feel shame, you internalize this kind of guilt, this, I must have done something, I'm dirty, I'm bad, I'm wrong. And it's horrible that we do that, but we do as survivors. And this was going to come out now. It was going to be, I would be stigmatized, a child would be stigmatized. And without actually articulating any of this in my head, people would know now. And it wasn't until I saw the ultrasound, and that's when it all changed for me. Just looking at that ultrasound, I remember this rush of joy and just smiling and being like, okay, kid, like, you and me, we're in this together. Like, I couldn't protect myself. I can protect you. I've got this. And then telling Jeff, there was a second of silence. And just after saying, like, I'm no preamble, just, I'm pregnant. And we knew, there wasn't like, I wonder if it's mine. We had been 8+ years, since his vasectomy. There was no chance. And he just said, okay. And I said, okay, what? Like, people are like, oh, I'm like, no, oh, like, I need more from you. Okay is not a proper response. I was like, okay, what? And he was like, honey, this is a gift. Like, this is something beautiful from something terrible. This is, we can do this. We love babies. We can do this, you and me. And I was like, yeah, we love babies. And it was just immediately our world that had been so askew kind of righted again. And it was he and I, and we were going to have a baby, and it was going to be beautiful. And it just, everything kind of smoothed out, and we were on familiar ground, and we had something tangible to look forward to.
Wow. Wow. I love that. That is so amazing. So, again, just kind of thinking from nosy people in the public and people
Sure.
that have the best of intentions. And I mean, under the best circumstances, you get all the unwelcomed advice as a pregnant
Oh,
mom,
sure.
and so in your situation, I'm sure, is even more extreme. So how did your family and friends and your church kind of react to this news? And how did, how did that work?
Yeah, it was very mixed. It was very mixed. My family, my dad, very Orthodox, old school Greek from the old country, not on board at all. It was, first of all, women who get raped are very suspicious. They've done something to cause it, or they're lying or something. And this wasn't a surprise to me. I knew his stand on this. And if, you get pregnant from rape and you're keeping it, then something is wrong. It was obviously not a rape or something. And he couldn't handle it. And so I was pretty much, we were done. That relationship was over if I was keeping the baby. And so that was the end of my relationship with my father and my brother. And he passed away a couple years later, and we never reconciled. And my brother was done with me also. So that was that side of the family. My mother was very, until the day she died, very, very pro-choice. Wanted it to be known, once I started public speaking, she was like, please tell people I love my grandson. I was just so concerned for you. And she was. I loved my mom so much. I was her only child. I'd had a very, very difficult fourth pregnancy. She was very concerned for me, not only physically, but emotionally. And I understand that she wasn't coming from a godly perspective at all. You know, from my mom's perspective, you know, I know you're very, you know, Jesus Bible thumpy, Jennifer, but, you know, and I was like, there's really no but, Mom. There's really no but here. She's like, please just think about it. And I was like, no. So once she realized that this just wasn't a discussion we were going to have, you know, I mean, you don't argue with me like, Jennifer, can you just not breathe today? Like, it's not a discussion. You know,
Right.
once she realized that, she was supportive, but she struggled with that. You know, I can't lose you. And I'm like, you're not going to lose me. And my husband's parents, very godly. This was interesting to me. I found out a couple years after the fact that my father-in-law, who's very righteous, very godly man, actually went to my husband and said, you know, um, no one would blame you if you guys couldn't do this. And that really shook my husband, because this was, you know, the man he had looked up to as his godly
Yeah.
role model his whole life. And it really showed us how deeply ingrained this idea was of except in cases of, you know, we support all life and we believe in that except for. And that was really kind of eye-opening to us. And I had a pastor tell me, you know, this is why we have abortion, God would understand. And
Mm.
I thought, really? Like you have a direct pipeline that we don't, that somehow God would understand if we murdered this child? It,
Wow.
it was really difficult. I think for the most part, most of our friends in our Christian circle were really like, you know, we're really proud of you guys for living out your conviction. And that kind of made me sad too, you
Mhm.
know, that it was even a discussion that
Yeah.
why would you be proud of us for not killing our child? Like, why is
Yeah.
that why
Yeah.
is that a discussion? Why is that a thing?
I know. Yeah.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be that we're lauded for not killing our children. Like that shouldn't, it really shouldn't be a discussion at all.
Right.
You know, this shouldn't be a story. I'm sorry that it is. I would love for it to not be a story.
Yeah.
I would love for it to not get attention, because that would mean like, right, you got raped and had a baby. So like, what else would you do? You know?
Yeah.
Um, but it was very mixed, and it continues to be something that uh that's sort of divisive. And the friends that we had who were like, this is stupid, and you're going to destroy your family, you're going to destroy your marriage, this child will always know that, you know, he was conceived in violence and he'll always be different, and all of that nonsense. Those friends kind of fell away, just sort of naturally just sort of fell away. And maybe that's good, that's unfortunate, but that's sort of how it happened. And God sort of brought us an entirely new family, especially as we sort of entered the pro-life activism world, which we'd never intended. It just sort of naturally happened. Um, but yeah, the response was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, I just love so much how you share, you know, so intimately the details leading up to that. And how do you react without violence to the people? Because I mean, like I hear the things, I hear people that make these horrible comments to other human beings that do amazing things like not kill their children. And so how do you respond when people say these vile things about your son being a, you know, a product of rape and violence? And just how do you deal with that? Because like, I mean, like my mama bear claws just want to come out for you. Don't you ever say that to anybody ever? And like I had somebody once tell me like they loved my story, but they just couldn't understand how I could ever forgive my biological father, who was one of my abusers. And so, and like, she was so angry with me because I dared to
Yes.
forgive my father. And so, and in comparison to this, I mean, it's just, it's so whack, the mental capacity
Yeah.
sometimes. So how do you respond to people who, in ignorance is the only way I can really describe it, you know, say things to you about your son?
So this is one of my favorite things. It's interesting when I write on forgiveness. Not I lose hundreds of followers. Seriously, every single time I write about forgiveness, people are enraged. I don't know what it is about it, but it infuriates people, and
Yeah.
that's sad. But I mean, it's interesting that you brought that up. But um, it's become one of my favorite things because I used to really struggle with people who I mean, said vicious, I would have coat hanger that walnut sized rapist deposit and blah, blah, blah. And, F people like this, you and your husband are the reason that this planet is going to hell and blah, 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 get the F off my planet and all this stuff. And, obviously you got some brain damage when that guy punched you in the head. And, you and your son should be sacrificed back to Satan and whatever. And it used to really get to me.
Awful.
It doesn't get to me
It
anymore.
gets
But
to me. It gets to me.
yeah,
I mean, it totally it gets to me. It's
like I have friends who I've had to ban from my page because they can't hold their tongue.
yeah. I
But
get it. It's awful.
yeah, it can be really bad. I will spend a lot of time talking to people who are really abusive because it's I've come to understand that the angrier they are, the more pain that they're in.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
I had someone write me the other day. This has got to be one of my favorite exchanges to date. And I don't believe that her story was true. I think she was just trying to get to me. But I could be wrong. But she didn't come at me from someone who was raped and is pregnant. Though the tone was different. The story tends to be anyway. She wrote me and she said, I'm raped and pregnant, I'm having an abortion and there's nothing you can do about it. And so there. And I was like, okay. But I just said, I'm so sorry. I wish you peace and healing. And there was like a long pause and she was like, what? Why? WTF? And I was like, why does me? And I said, and she said again, what? And I said, I wish you peace and healing. And she said, what's wrong with you? And I said, look, I absolutely hate abortion to my core. I think it's incredibly evil. I said, but you matter. And I said, and what happened to you was horrific. And I said, I wish you peace and healing. What happened to you should have never happened to you. And I said, your baby matters. And I said, and so do you. And then she came back with, well, Abby Johnson is stupid. And I was like, what? And like, she's mad.
Okay. Let's talk about Abby now.
All right. I was like, actually, she's not, but okay. But it's just, I find that when people don't know what to do with kindness. So when people come after me, calling me a rape apologist and calling me all kinds of certain things, so you think, 11-year-olds should give birth. I'm like, is that what I said? Like it, and no, I don't think 11-year-olds should be, should have abortions. Like, I don't understand why you think that that's less traumatizing, or no, I don't.
Exactly.
I think it's horrible what happened to them. I think it, that doesn't make it less of a tragedy. I don't understand, like, what people put all kinds of things in my mouth, but I don't respond angrily and I don't respond calling names and all of that. I just, so you think this, so you think that. I'm like, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. And that's horrible. And I wish you all the peace and healing in the world. So you think I should have this, so you think that. I'm so sorry for your pain. And I pray that you find peace and healing. And they don't know what to do with that. I'm like, I'm not going to get into tit for tat with you. And I'm not going to get into, well, what about the raped 5-year-old? And I'm not going to play those games.
Right.
I'm not doing that. What happened to you was horrific. And I'm so, so sorry. And that's the bottom line. And that really diffuses kind of, a quiet answer turns away wrath. I think my husband memorized that, like, in the early parts of our marriage, because it really works. If someone fight with you, you just look like a fool screaming at them.
Yeah.
But it really does diffuse the situation, because it doesn't matter if you've had an abortion, you're in pain. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you didn't get the support that you needed. And I'm sorry that we weren't there for you. And I'm sorry that you're in that kind of pain. And I'm sorry that something happened to you where you felt like that was your only choice. And that's really all that matters. What's done is done, and you're in pain. And I'm sorry about that. And that's the truth. And I hope that you find healing, and I hope that you recognize that forgiveness is available to you. And that's all that needs to be said.
I love that so much. Well, kind of as we just wrap up, I could just sit here all night long and just talk to you and just glean, this great from this great conversation. But as we wrap up, and anything, again, we're we're a very pro-life ministry, but our primary focus, our mission statement is to heal those that are broken from abortion. But we also, it's a big part of that is by educating the community of the truth of abortion and the consequences of abortion.
Right.
And so for those that are watching tonight, what is just kind of, again, as we close out, the woman that's watching that maybe has been raped
Mhm.
recently and she finds out she's pregnant, or maybe she was raped and she didn't make the same choice as you,
Mhm.
did choose abortion. What does your heart want to say to that person watching tonight?
I would say that, oh gosh, that's a quick on the spot thing. I would say um that she's not alone. I would say to anyone out there who has been violated in such a way that it sounds trite, but it's not your fault, and you're not alone, and healing is possible, and it's sort of a lifelong journey, but it is possible. And if you chose abortion after rape, that doesn't make you evil. It doesn't make you disgusting. I know there are unfortunately pro-lifers out there who have said horrible things about women who abort, and I wish that I could erase that. I wish I could take that away. Um, but you are seen, and you are heard, and you are beloved, and you matter. And if I could tattoo that on your heart, I would, because you are valuable, and someone died for you. And please reach out and find other women who have walked that path with you, because the worst thing is feeling alone when you're not. And our organization is Love Louder, and we have a website, lovelouder.com. We have a hotline. All of that's on the website, and please reach out to us 24/7. There's someone who can just talk to you and hear you, and so you know that you're never alone.
I
And
love
there's
that
always
so
someone
much.
here.
So, and I just, a question came to my mind, and I don't know if it's from the Lord or just from my own wacky brain, but I just want to ask the question. Obviously, your life changed when you found out you were pregnant after the trauma from your rape. How do you think? And I don't want to play the what if games, because you can't do that because you don't know
Right.
if. But how do you feel that the pregnancy, the child that came from the tragedy, changed your course of healing specifically from the rape? Because or do you think it changed anything, because you were kind of on this path of healing and struggling within your marriage? How did pregnancy news change that direction?
So I was doing so poorly. I was slipping back into, I was anorexic years before, and I always, when I struggled, I always kind of slipped back into restriction and self-harming behaviors and things like that. And I was going down that path. And I could see very clearly not taking care of myself. And Joshua, meaning Jehovah saves, because he did and he does. Joshua was a purpose for me to have to take care of myself. So for me personally, and I think it's different for every woman, but for me personally, he seemed like God's way of telling me that there was someone else, a very real manifestation of why I had to take care of this body. And it shouldn't take that, but for me it really did. And I still struggled tremendously, but I can't imagine healing without him. I can't imagine my family healing without him. He's been such a joy to everyone, and he really did change everything. Every little aspect of our life was changed for the better because of him.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. And, I just, please send our love to your husband, Jeff. I just, again,
I
I know you shouldn't be put on this pedestal for doing what should be the normal thing to do. But in the world that we are in, it is a huge
Sadly.
deal that you chose life, and not even that you just chose life, because I have several people that chose life from a pregnancy, from a baby that came from rape, but then they chose to gift to it through adoption, which is also a very admirable choice. And
Absolutely.
so, um I can never wrap my mind around the concept of adding the trauma of abortion on top of the trauma of being violated in such a way that just does, my mind cannot compute how that makes sense to anybody. But so often in the world that we live in, that is the first choice. And
Yeah.
if you go against that, the hate sometimes that comes from the people that love you and care the most about you, it doesn't always make sense. So again, I just thank you so much for coming onto our program and sharing with us. And I hope that in the future we'll have you at one of our events, and you can share with kind of a bigger crowd. But thank you so much. And just as we close out, I just want to thank you. Please, check out their social media and their website. I'll have links in the comments for this show. And I love following them. You'll love the videos. There's beautiful videos of their son and just of their family. It's amazing. So please just reach out if you need to connect with them in any way. And just remember that no matter what you have done, no matter what's been done to you, there is hope and healing in Jesus Christ. God bless you all, and thank you for joining us.